Buenos dias. Sometimes it's hard to know if people are taking the Mickey Mouse, or if they're being serious, right? Thrust in a vacuum. Can't go through all the comments. A couple though. Somebody, that experiment you did, it would work in a vacuum. You're totally missing the point. Of course it would work in a vacuum. It's not an experiment. All it proves is you cannot self-propel. You cannot self-propel. You cannot use thrust against yourself and slow down because there is nothing for the outgoing thrust to work against because it's a vacuum. Of course it would work in a vacuum. You cannot self-propel. If I put this in a vacuum, it would just stay where it is. But if it was cut and just stayed there, it would shoot. You cannot self-propel. You cannot use a vacuum to slow down in with thrust because there is nothing there for the thrust to go into. You cannot. It's illogical to think in a vacuum that you could blast thrust out and make some kind of barrier resistance there and then slow yourself down. Apollo 11, 24,200 miles an hour. That is the speed that it had to achieve to escape Earth's velocity, okay? 39,000 kilometers per hour. Once it got to 80% of the distance to the moon, this is where the moon's gravity and Earth's gravity kind of blank each other out. So once Apollo 11 was at this stage here, they could basically free fall to the moon. Once they got just over this line, the moon's attraction was stronger than that of Earth's. When they got to here, they blasted the escape velocity from Earth, got to a certain speed, and then just kind of cruised. And they got slower and slower because of Earth's gravitational pull was pulling them. Right there is the slowest part of the journey. They were traveling, allegedly, at 2,300 miles an hour. So from blasting and reaching 24,200 miles per hour, they got to that speed, and by the time they got to this crucial point in the journey, they had slowed down to 2,300 miles per hour. After this, it's like the hump of a hill, and then the moon's gravity attracts them. I couldn't actually find out how fast the moon pulled them, what speed they got to by the time they went from here to the moon, right? But as they approached the moon, they had to do the LOI, the Lunar Orbit Insertion Blast. This is it. We have arrived. They did the LOI and slowed down to 3,700 miles an hour. From what we don't know, because fast, slowest point, and then the moon's gravitational pull pulled them towards the moon. We don't know how fast they got to. I can't find it, but they did the lunar orbit insertion, and that slowed them down to 3,700 miles per hour. That's 6,000 kilometers per hour. That's 5, 6, 7 and a bit times the speed of a passenger jet. All right? Now, this is it. Here we are. Thrust in a vacuum. They slowed down from we don't know what to 3,700 miles per hour. Here's the thing. The command capsule and Michael Collins, all of them, the three of them, before they separated, they were 60 miles above the moon, orbiting the moon. That is the minimum speed to stay in orbit around the moon. Any slower and you fall towards the moon, any faster and you throw yourself out of the moon's gravitational pull and you end up going walkabout. Here it is. we've already had one massive blast of thrust in a vacuum. They are orbiting at nearly 100 kilometers from the moon's surface. They are traveling at 3,700 miles per hour, right? They separate. The Eagle, the total weight of the Eagle, that's the ascent stage and the descent stage, weighed a total of 27 tons, right? Just separated by Michael Collins. See you later, guys, right? As if that happened. And then from 6,000 kilometers per hour, 3,700 miles per hour, they used thrust in a vacuum to slow down. From 6,000, they slowed 27 tons down. From traveling at 6,000 kilometers per hour, 27 tons with thrust in a vacuum. They slowed that down with thrust in a vacuum, with no resistance to slow down into. You think they somehow didn't need the vacuum and that they self-propelled, that they put the thrust on, and even though there was nothing for the thrust to work against, it slowed them down. They managed to self-propel. They slowed down without using the medium in which they were traveling. And they slowed down right down to a tick, the Eagle has landed. Listen, this is it, right? There's a billion reasons why they didn't go to the moon. But this thrust in a vacuum, 1969. 1969, the vacuum of space, they somehow managed to slow down from 6,000 kilometers per hour, descend 96 kilometers. That's how high they were when they were traveling at this speed. And in a vacuum, with no resistance, they somehow used thrust to slow that beast down from that speed and that altitude to land on the moon. Right here, that's your reason why. I mean, all of it. But there is no resistance in a vacuum. There's no resistance in a vacuum. You blast that thrust and it doesn't have anything to work against. But it still slowed them down. They didn't need any atmosphere. They don't need any kind of resistance. They just slowed themselves down. They basically self-propelled. This one hit this one and then somehow slowed down. Look, doesn't want to be there. Look. Right here, it's as much about rational thought processes and logic as it is common sense. No. There is no resistance to talk of in a vacuum. There is nothing for the thrust to work against, to then give yourself that every action has an equal and opposite reaction. There is nothing for that initial action to work against. I might not be back today, but I'm hoping to be. I've got so much to get done today, but I'll see how I go. Guys, listen. I'm just being objective, okay? It makes no odds to me whether they went to the moon or didn't go to the moon. It makes no odds to me whether light is absolute or travels at 299,792 kilometers per second. It's obvious during a solar eclipse that light is absolute. There is no delay. There is no delay, is there? The sun is directly behind the moon. It can't be an 8-minute and 20-second old image of the sun because allegedly it took the photons 8 minutes and 20 seconds to get here. So how can you be seeing photons in real time at the same time as seeing an 8-minute and 20-old sun, even though it's directly behind the moon? Listen, logic and common sense, everything, all of that stuff has been left by the wayside. Logic and common sense. These things did not happen, and the sun's light is absolute. All right, folks, I will be back. Peace.